Welcome to this meeting of Performance and Overview Scrutiny. My name is Robert. I'm an officer, and I'm opening the meeting in order to begin with item 1, which is the election of the chair. So could I have a proposal and a seconder for that proposal, please? I've got Councillor Buckler.
Yes, I'd like to propose Councillor Neil as chair, please.
Great, thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Well, by show of hands, perhaps? Yep, Councillor Neil, thank you very much. Councillor Neil is instated as the chair, so there's that.
Do I get a plan?
And I'll pass over to you, Chair, for the rest of the agenda.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you, colleagues. I'm sure we're going to have another really full year of reports. Today is a great example, I think, of really important reports and full of extremely relevant information for our residents and for us as a committee and for the wider county council. So it's good to, as it were, be starting this year with such important information, such valued reports. So thank you for that. I'm going to move us into the election and appointment of the vice chair. And I'm looking for the nomination. I see Paul, Councillor Pavia, with your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'd like to nominate Councillor Rachel Buckler, please.
Thank you, Councillor Pavia. And seconder, Councillor Newell. Councillor Buckler, you are appointed as vice chair, and thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you.
So we move on to apologies for absence, and I think we have two, Robert?
Yes, Chair. We have Councillor Crook and Councillors Crook and Bond from the committee, but also Councillor Howes. He's running late, so he should be here, but he's not here right now, and also Cabinet Member Laura Wright.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the public open forum, and were there any inputs from the public on this?
No one today, Chair.
So thank you for that. We're then moving straight into the first of the important reports that are in front of us today. I'm pleased to welcome the Leader of the Council, Councillor Brocklesby. Thank you for joining the meeting today, Councillor Brocklesby. I really appreciate your time. And we also have with us Peter Davis, who many of you will be familiar with as the Deputy Chief Executive and the Strategic Director of Resources, and also Paul Jefford, who is, if I've got your name right, Paul?
Yes.
Who is the CEO of SRS. There's another little word salad or letter salad of an acronym, but I'm sure you will unpack what SRS is all about as we go into the report. So we're going to start with the first report, which is Building the Foundations for Data and AI-Enabled Public Services. They're connected issues in many ways, but they are also areas that we would probably want to scrutinise separately and together in the report itself. And that is what our job today is, to scrutinise the business case for foundational investment in data and AI infrastructure necessary to secure programme funding and deliver sustainable service benefits and outcomes. And I'm sure many residents and businesses who might be interested to watch, as well as staff, will be very interested in this area. It's such a matter of discussion across, if you like, the breakfast and dinner tables around the country. It will be very relevant to so many people. So we will have all read the report. So I'm going to ask Peter Davis if you'd be good enough. I don't know if Councillor Brocklesby wanted to speak first about it, but if you do, please do. But I know you're going to pick out the key points from the report as opposed to going through the entire report, which we will have read. But over to you.
Let's start with Peter Davis giving the report summarised. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brocklesby. So, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, and good morning to committee members and those watching online. Just move my mic slightly away from me. So, as the Chair has just alluded to, I'm working on the basis that members of the committee have read the report. So I will look to try and keep it brief and to provide, I guess, a broader overview over the space of 5 minutes or so. I'm looking to focus on three things, I think, for the benefit of the committee in sort of opening up what this proposal and these investment proposals are really about. Firstly, what that'll mean in practice for the council services, and I guess the benefits for residents, and then thirdly, just in terms of how we're managing some of the associated risks that naturally will come in sort of moving forward and adopting and embracing AI and data. So starting off in terms of what the proposal is about, and why I'm presenting the report on behalf of, I guess, the council along with Mary Ann, but that we've got Paul Jefford here with us from the Shared Resource Service. So this investment is a partnership investment across the SRS, the Shared Resource Service, and the SRS, for the benefit, particularly for those online, is a collaboration that looks to support the local authorities' delivery of ambitions in terms of technology, data and digital. It's a very mature collaboration. It's been in place for some 14, 15 years, I think now, and has recently expanded its collaboration into the space of data and digital. The proposals themselves look to secure a 3-year phased investment that look to improve how the council works and how, in fact, residents experience our services. And that is through making better use of data and introducing AI both safely and responsibly. It's important to sort of highlight, I think, what is a significant investment in the round. I think, Chair, we were just talking before the meeting started. I think this being a seminal moment, I think you're probably right. I think that'll be the case for many public bodies and organisations, not just in the UK but more widely, looking at, I guess, those advantages that can be gained from adopting and embracing AI and data in the right way. But it's an investment of over £2.5 million across the local authority partners over the next 3 years. In fact, for the council itself, as the report talks to, £851,000 of investment. But these investment proposals at headline level, as touched on, they aim to improve access to services for residents. They look to support staff by reducing administrative burdens, and both through AI and data, we look to enable earlier intervention, better demand management, and ultimately improve service quality and outcomes for residents. Probably the crucial element here is the approach that we're looking to take is controlled. It is stage gated in terms of how the investment is released and ensuring that we're getting the value benefit from those investments. And critically, that human decision making is retained at all times. We're not looking to let AI loose, so to speak. In terms of moving on, in terms of what this means in practice, and in terms of some of those real-world examples and applications, I'll touch on maybe some of the types of use cases that we're already exploring and that we're looking to focus on. Firstly, just in terms of our AI journey, a focus into what's described as the digital front door, the AI front door, and that looking to improve access for residents. Clearly, residents' expectations are that they want simple and responsive access, and we don't always achieve that as a council. I think that's been acknowledged. And obviously, the way we're looking to embrace AI possibly into the background or the foreground of our customer services interactions, it will look to drive some of those benefits. Important to sort of say that this is not a covert operation to remove face-to-face and telephone sort of access for residents. Clearly, those will remain. What we're looking to do here is actually enhance service delivery. The second area, as I touched on, is in terms of reducing admin burden. And for those of you, I guess, who have embraced or dabbled with AI in your personal lives, I think you'll probably recognise the potential it has for drafting reports, summarising notes, and compiling information from multiple systems. And AI obviously supports staff in a way of reducing the admin burden and allowing them to focus on ultimately their professional judgment and that important interaction with residents. The report, as the chair highlighted, is not just around AI, it is about data as well, and what we're describing as our data capabilities around single view. And that will in turn allow us to have better safeguarding and earlier intervention at the heart of that work. The initial investment is going to be centering itself on what is described as single view of the child, and that looks to help professionals and practitioners see a more complete picture of the child, and will therefore enable earlier intervention, better coordination, and more informed professional decisions across social services and education as well. It doesn't make the safeguarding decisions. It's important to say that, as I've said. It's important to keep reiterating that point. It will provide important insight to improve decision making. I think coupled with that and moving on, prevention and demand management will be one key area of benefit that we will look to exploit. And that allows us to target resources more effectively into vulnerable households, areas of high need, and I'm sure the Scrutiny Committee is well aware of where those areas exist across council services. And stepping beyond, we have further benefits and use cases around Welsh language. I know, looking across to Paul, I know that there is some specific targeted focus around Welsh language and translation, and the benefits that will afford us just in terms of improving inclusion and embracing Welsh language standards. If I move forward finally then onto, I guess, key risks, because it's important that we talk about these risks and giving confidence to the Scrutiny Committee, as we will and have done to Cabinet, and as we are now doing publicly. So the integrated impact assessment hopefully is a helpful support to the covering report and talks to those areas of risk. The key ones I'll just draw out. Firstly, around digital exclusion. As I've already highlighted, we are looking to retain telephone and face-to-face access, the support that we have through the contact centre and the hubs. And we will look to inbuild, I guess, assisted digital support beyond what we will look to do in terms of embracing AI into our service redesign. There's often a quoted risk around with AI in terms of bias and fairness and transparency, and importantly in the way that, and I think Paul may touch on, this is a governed and structured means of looking to roll out AI across the council. It is not a free-for-all. This is going to be done in a structured manner, and we will have bias testing and monitoring inbuilt as part of our testing and ongoing review. The third area to talk to, and again, grateful that we've got Matt Gatehouse here today as Chief Officer with responsibility for workforce as much as strategic lead for data with us today. But it would be remiss of me if I didn't touch on workforce impact. And I think to talk to that actually positively, it's very easy to get yourself into a slight doom loop with AI, just in terms of the threat that it may introduce, and an anxiety that might create for the workforce. And the important thing to highlight here that this is not just a technology investment. Our aim, talking to my point of administrative burden being removed earlier, this is about augmenting staff, not replacing them. This is about investing in skills and capability to allow them to embrace AI and data, and as I touched on earlier, allowing staff to focus on professional judgment and resident outcomes. Notwithstanding that, I think it's just important in my role as Statutory Director for Resources, there is a very clear link as per the conversation before the meeting, Chair. There is a very clear link into our change and improvement programme, FPOP, for purpose on purpose, and equally into our medium-term financial strategy. There are productivity gains and efficiency gains to be realised here from this investment, and those will be identified and captured and factored in as part of future savings proposals. But that will be done very carefully. It will be carefully managed through staff turnover, as needs be. I've touched on safeguarding and data use. I think I've already highlighted the point, just in terms of, the AI output here is very much advisory into what will be qualified professionals acting on that intelligence, that improved intelligence. And then finally, I probably finish off, and importantly, around environmental consideration. So for those of you who keep abreast of, the media and the press, there is a level of concern around mass adoption of AI. It is a fact that increased compute demand, as it's called, that comes with AI, does have a consequential impact on energy and water use in terms of data centres. Paul will be able to talk to this in further detail if that comes forward as a question, but it's important just to highlight that we've already made successful transition, or at least the SRS has, in terms of migrating across to shared cloud platforms with Amazon Web Services, and that in itself looks to reduce duplication. But I should also touch on Amazon Web Services, as it does in the report, as our preferred cloud provider, that their commitments to achieve net zero carbon by 2040. And it's just important just to understand that and the progress they're already making towards that. But coupled with that, we have a responsibility as a council in this space as well, given our commitments around climate change, etc. And we will be introducing an AI policy that will make clear that we will look to make responsible use of AI. That will need to be designed into our work. So I think just in terms of sort of drawing conclusion, I think it's probably just to highlight in terms of and emphasise in terms of how we stay in control here. I think I've already emphasised, that the investment and the benefits will be secured through a sort of a phased and stage-gated delivery, both in terms of the data work and AI work programmes. There is clear governance and accountability built in around this, and that is already in place and established. Paul, through the SRS. I know, Marianne, you sit on the SRS strategic board. I chair some of the governance arrangements, therefore, within the council. We will have impact assessments undertaken on all use cases that we take forward, and there will be a benefit and value framework that is built around all of the projects that are delivered. I'd expect, Chair, there to be ongoing scrutiny and evaluation, and clearly we have the comfort and the confidence of the SRS partnership, which is, as I said, mature and high performing, and some of the selected partners that we will look to work with in terms of moving forward. So I think the final points to scrutiny really is that this is about building foundation. This is not large scale transformation overnight. It's phased and evidence led, and as I've touched on, there'll be clear points in terms of evaluation. But finally and importantly, this does look to strongly align with council priorities in terms of prevention and early intervention, in terms of reducing inequality, as I've talked to, and some of those broader requirements around wellbeing and future generations. I'd probably maybe just stop there, Chair, in terms of my input, but hopefully members can take assurance that we're looking to move this forward in a cautious, sort of governed, but a very much outcome-focused approach. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. And I'm going to open to questions just in a second. If I may just ask one to move us into that particular area. And Councillor Brocklesby, you may want to add, I see you just turned towards me, you may want to add something. But can I just ask around this area? The report is about building the foundations over a 3-year period. there are a great many organizations out there that are rapidly embracing AI, not talking about in 3 years' time still building the foundations. So are we being realistic and ambitious enough in understanding the potential impact in all sorts of ways of AI on our organization and services, or is caution getting in the way such that within actually a relatively short time, by year 2, the idea of another 2 years of building the foundations might seem extraordinarily unambitious and very slow? I just wondered, before we move into wider questions, your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think it's a fair question to bring up front. So I think for those who've read the report, and just to sort of emphasise, there's a lot of front loading of investment here. Whilst this investment is over a 3-year period, there's a lot of front loading of the investment, both with the AI programme and the first phase of the work around single view. And that is intentional, Chair, and to your point in terms of driving pace, in terms of delivery and outcome and impact. The intention is that we will look to draw on trusted partners in this early period of the 3 years, and from that then the SRS and the councils will insource the capability to be able to then accelerate beyond that through years 2 and 3. So hopefully that's helpful, Chair. I can see the leader wanting to come in. Thanks.
May I speak, Chair?
Councillor Brocklesby, please. Yes.
Thank you. I think that's an important question that you raise. The reality is, of course, that we cannot do nothing because change is already ongoing. It's already ongoing in the council and in our collaborating partners, and has been for some time. This report has been brought to bring it all together, recognise what's happened up to now, and to make sure that we do not work in a fragmented way, that we do not work in a way which actually undermines governance and undermines the principles and values of SRS. And when I say SRS, I mean ourselves and our collaborating partners. And at the core of that is to maintain the human face of public services. We know from global evidence that unbridled AI development can indeed lead to unintended consequences which have negative benefits on all sorts of people. If I can give you one example that was brought to my attention a couple of weeks ago, the difficulties of recruitment now when AI tools write the forms so that you cannot tell any difference between the people that are presenting for a job. What we are trying to do, and what evidence tells us, that if you get an enabling structure at all levels of government operating at the same time to ensure that there are safeguards and checks in place while moving at pace with how you use and embed the tools, you are more likely to be human-driven rather than AI-driven. This is a debate that is going on now, as we know, your lovely phrase at breakfast and dinner tables, Chair. And it's one that, for most people, is quite frightening, as well as giving unlimited possibilities, leads to the fear that there will be job losses, that there will be loss of identity, that will be a loss of sense of place, of location, of being connected to other human beings. As a council, as a joint collaborative venture through SRS, we cannot claim that we alone will solve those problems. What we can do, and I'm sure Paul will talk further to how we're going to do that, is to make sure that we put in place what I would call the bedrock as much as the foundations. I agree with you, the foundation sounds like we're just starting and we're being cautious. No, we're not starting. We're making sure that we have a strong bedrock, that we are not building on sand, and that we can demonstrate very quickly through investment in the first year, through a single view of child. I think another two examples I could give is a single view of homelessness, where we can bring together all the data so we prevent people becoming homeless. That is cost saving, more effective, obviously, but the human impact of preventing someone becoming homeless and allowing them to maintain safety, feel they have a home, the dignity of that is almost incalculable, actually, and is what we're trying to do. Another example would be a single view of debt. Preventing people getting to the point where they are facing the law because of their debts by bringing together all the points which on their own may not appear too worrying, but are triggers, if they're put together, for something that's quite serious. Disengagement from people who have been supporting you in the past, being recorded, linked to arrears in paying rent, linked to not keeping up with HP payments. Suddenly you get a 360-degree picture of someone that is needing support quite urgently, and by getting that support can put in place a plan which allows them to manage that debt and continue living the life as they want. So yes, there are risks, as with any good intervention. You confront those risks, you mitigate against them, but you ensure that you move at the pace that will allow you to build on efficiencies, but never lose sight of your principles and the core for what we are doing. This is not driven by technology. This is driven by our principles and the core of benefiting our residents in everything we do in a more efficient and effective way.
Thank you, Councillor Brocklesby, and I really appreciate that you've shared with us, some really clear examples of in the ways in which AI could improve services rather than in some way be detrimental in their impact. I was a little concerned at the start of what you said, but you allayed a lot of those concerns when you said we can't do nothing, we have to do something, because of course doing something is not necessarily the correct alternative to doing nothing, but you've given some very clear examples about how things could improve. Paul, I wondered if you were itching to say something before we move into questions, if members of the committee will allow me just to invite you. If there is anything just now, I'm sure there'll be some questions that you want to respond to, but if there's something you're itching to say.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the opportunity. So good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me here today. I would just reiterate and touch on a couple of the points mentioned. So as we're aware, and as it's outlined in the paper, the investment is very significant, and obviously it becomes more palatable and worthwhile in terms of looking at the shared investment across the four authorities. When we look at trying to do this standalone, it becomes quite cost prohibitive. In terms of the demand, something that is mentioned in the paper as well is that the demand is continuing, and we've seen the statistics year over year. So the complexity is increasing of cases, and the number of touch points that local authorities have to manage with their residents as well is increasing. So the ultimate goal of some of these solutions that we're talking about here, so for example, single view of a child, is when we look to implement AI, we look at the foundations that Peter mentioned. The foundations are effectively the guardrails and the role-based access control and methods in which we can audit to make sure that the right people have the right levels of access. So those are the controls that are being built in stage one. When we look at AI at a very high level, it's effectively it's pattern recognition at a very advanced level with machine learning. So we already have the data sets today, but unfortunately the data is in multiple repositories, in Excel spreadsheets, in SharePoints, online network drives, and so on. So instead of the practitioners within the local authority spending 80% of their time searching and correlating the data, for example, that relates to a single child,
the AI and the tools will access the data that we already have, and it will pull that information together. So it enables the practitioner to focus their time on dealing with the complex cases and having the information on hand, which they can then leverage to service our residents. So, and then in terms of the AI paper, I think we can split that into two. The one part of it is the customer facing, so the resident facing. So we talk about having web channels and call center chatbots effectively. What we look to do and implement with that is, from the data that we've collected from some of the local authorities already, is that a large proportion of the interactions with citizens relate to, for example, waste collection questions in terms of dates and times and so on. We can deflect and we can answer a lot of those questions, those FAQ style interactions, using AI, using the chatbots with the data that we already have within our possession. And then effectively that frees up the human agents to be able to then again deal with the more complex interactions that they have. So that's the front-facing, forward-facing AI element of the paper. The second element of the AI paper is more internal. So that's how we leverage AI to review the data, the policies, the processes, and effectively enable teams to be able to utilize these services. So whether it be to do with, as Peter said, translation services, so for example Welsh and English, maintaining formatting of documentation when documents are translated, and indeed when we face freedom of information requests or subject access requests and so on, we have the ability to be able to search the data and put in redaction where required to meet GDPR requirements and so on for personal identifiable information. So in all, what we've done so far is we've built some of these solutions and we've demoed them at a very low level, just so that we can gain an interest from the local authorities, understand their appetite and which areas they want to focus on. So the AI, those two parts, both internal for productivity and customer facing, is one work stream, and then the other is the single view of a child. But as Councillor Mary-Ann just explained, there are other opportunities, other use cases for delivering a single view, whether that's based on demand throughout your local authorities, based on housing, but ultimately the outcome is to deliver better services for the residents, and the guardrails will be in place with that heavy investment in year one, and then years 2 and year 3, effectively we will look to expand the various use cases that we can adopt. There is around 160 use cases put forward so far from the 4 local authorities. So what we will do is we will work, and we have already been working with a collective from each of the local authorities to actually agree and come to a consensus on which are the most important use cases we can put forward and implement first across all 4 authorities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. I just thought it would be very helpful to have your initial overview on those points, so thank you for that. And I'm going to open to questions now, and first of all, Councillor Buckler.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Paul. Actually, my first question was going to be, can you explain the SRS involvement in this brave new world we're coming into? So that was really helpful. Thank you. You mentioned that 160 use cases have been flagged up by the all authorities. How many are you going to focus on first? And you talk about customer services and the internal structures that will benefit. How are you going to balance whether it's customer services or internal in your initial sort of going forward with this new proposal? Peter mentioned AI bias. AI bias. What does he mean by that? And ongoing evaluation seems key and critical. This, as you say, it's a large outlay for all authorities concerned, and obviously we're particularly concerned about Monmouthshire. And lastly, the environmental impact. It's estimated that 30% more energy is used in AI applications. So how are we going to mitigate that? And if you could, elucidate on those. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Buckler. Some great questions. Peter, did you want to start with picking up on those?
Thank you, Chair. I'll maybe open up on the first one, and then Paul, I don't know if you want to sort of come in. I'll maybe just sort of provide a brief response on the first point in terms of the 160 use cases. So I think I'd expect Paul to talk to this similarly, but I think it's one of the benefits, as Paul alluded to earlier, the benefits of delivering this as a collaboration. Because it not only makes the investment much more cost effective, it obviously allows that combined capability of the SRS to be worked through. But we also need to just reflect on the fact that there are 4 local authority partners working with the SRS. So why is that relevant to your question, Councillor Buckler? It's relevant because, as we have done over a number of it helps because of what we've been able to do very successfully with the SRS over quite a number of years now. So one local authority, for example, might look to take a lead, be the proverbial guinea pig, I guess, on a particular piece of work from which the other 3 councils can therefore come off the back of and benefit from. And similarly with Authority 2, 3 and 4, that can then allow a level of scaling to be done more quickly than otherwise would be the case. So I know, Paul, I'll hand across to you, and I know it's a live discussion at the minute in terms of probably the earlier question in terms of the speed of trajectory and how quickly we can move at. It's important to state that the local authority will need to put its own capacity and resource in on our side of the fence, as much as the SRS looks to do with its investment and that of partners being brought forward. It requires both. It is the reason as to why there is a further call upon the reserve funding as a backstop to support any capacity backfill that might be needed, to make sure that we, as the local authority, are not the reason for pace being slowed down. So, Paul, do you want to maybe just touch on that maybe the 160 use cases, and I guess in terms of the strategy that you're looking to take to taking those forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Great questions. So, in terms of the agreed shared AI solutions that have already been discussed, there's commonality with what's called the AI front door. So that effectively would be, as I mentioned, the customer-facing, be it online or telephony interactions that residents would have. So there's already agreement in place between all 4 authorities that should be one of the first. In terms of the 160, those are various use cases that have been discussed with different departments across all authorities. I mentioned a couple in terms of the generic redaction and translation tools, which are helpful across different departments. But there are others which are more bespoke and more focused. So, for example, HR could leverage a team AI agent or a team bot. And what that would do effectively is it would access data that we provide, which would be policies and processes, for example, that HR have published. And then it would make those available, and it would be able to reference those documents, and it would be able to answer questions submitted from anybody else in the organisation. So perhaps you have a new starter, they want to understand or ask questions, be it about their pay cycle, or questions about travel and expense policies, and it will actually review that document and it will answer those questions, and then it will also provide you with a reference to the actual document, which you can then open, and it will show you within that document where your question is answered. So in effect, what that does is that deflects from that perhaps new team member who's joined a team in a department within the local authority, from having then to make a call to HR. And again, each of the HRs within each local authority have already advised that, you know, a considerable amount of time is spent answering these FAQ type questions. So essentially we create a self-service for the different departments to answer that. So a HR bot would be one example, which again the local authorities have agreed and are keen to implement. From the 160 total, as Peter mentioned, those conversations are happening so that we can actually collectively agree what the priority order are. In terms of your question as to how many, obviously the AI front door, single view of a child, those are both very important workstream deliveries for year one. Within the 160, we'd like to identify, sort of 3 of those use cases per authority to start off with and implement again during the first year. The important part, though, as Peter said, is to get consensus. We don't within SRS have the bandwidth to go and work on individual work streams. The idea and the reasoning behind the collaboration on this project is that we collectively agree and work on the priority projects. And what we've done is we've actually selected and asked the local authorities to elect which should progress and be the front runner on the different work streams. So effectively, all will benefit, all will be deployed across all the authorities, but there may be authorities that go first and second and so on in terms of the delivery of those work streams. In terms of AI bias, which was another question you had, that can be an issue, and certainly on what's called public LLMs, which are the large language models that sit behind these AI engines, you can have misinformation, inaccurate information. So there are, as was discussed earlier, there are safeguards in place, and there are approved LLMs that we can use if we need to reach out and go and utilize public large language models. But equally, you can protect your organization by using closed large language models as well. So effectively, we would utilize data that's held within the local organization for some of those AI use cases, which would reference our internal policies and processes and so on. So on the basis that those policies and processes, when they were published, were vetted and approved and are reviewed in an ongoing fashion, then that would limit or reduce the risk of bias within our AI work streams for those internal teams. And then lastly, just on the sustainability piece, as was previously mentioned, it is a huge area of concern that's been identified globally. There are many opportunities to improve that. Obviously, what we've done is we've selected to go, as Peter mentioned, with Amazon Web Services, who have already made a commitment to go carbon net zero by 2040. They also have other mechanisms in place to try and reduce their carbon footprint. So in terms of sourcing their energy and also investing in things like solar and wind farms around the globe, again, to help offset their energy utilization. Just to put it in layman's terms, if SRS, as we previously did, hosted our own infrastructure, for example, we may have one new service for which we had to purchase a server and build and put into a private data center. If we did that, we'd be purchasing a server which had capacity to run multiple services. We'd put that into the data center, and then effectively it would use the energy consumption, so the number of kilowatts would be utilized. However, the actual server would be underutilized until such a time that more services come online. By the move into AWS, what you get there is you get AWS's cloud infrastructure, their servers that are purpose-built and then effectively you get to utilize a proportion of those servers which is fit for purpose, so you right size it for your organization and your requirements, and you also have the ability to, for example, to turn those off out of hours, to spin them back up, so that you're only utilizing what you need to. And AWS have done a magnificent job in terms of creating the tools and the user interfaces to be able to customize that and enable that so that we can help reduce power consumption. AWS also have some other initiatives that they've worked on, including the creation of their own silicon and so on to reduce carbon footprint. There are multiple papers from Amazon online as well, which attest to the progress that they've made in sustainability.
Well, I'm just going to ask you. We need to maintain some questions, and I don't want to sort of stop questions from coming. So, if you are able to pause there, and if we're able to, that's been really helpful there. And I know, Councillor Brocklesby, you were trying to come in before we move to the other questions that Councillor Buckler still had.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on the point that Councillor Buckler made about evaluation. Chair, I share with you a deep commitment to improving the way in which the Council evaluates the impact and the outcomes of all their interventions and services, and this is no exception. I think it's important to recognise, and it is built into this paper, that it is monitoring, its evaluation, its learning and impact assessment that is ongoing and in a feedback loop, actually. I would argue a double feedback loop, and bear with me. One of them is the interface between the technology, the staff, the expertise that we need to test, improve services as they go on, in the way we use AI tools, the way in which we utilise data through this foundations that we're putting in place. And that has to, by its very nature, build the capability of the staff to use, question and challenge, so that the tools are made fit for purpose for what we want to do. And that's a continuous feedback as we go forward. The double feedback loop is, from that, there are different points in which we pause to have a look at the bigger picture. The quarterly meetings of the SRS board, which myself and Paul Matthews sit on, where this will be brought to the board to discuss progress and to question and interrogate, is it progressing in the right way with the right people and having the right kind of impacts in the way that is described in this paper. We also have touch points, gateway as it's called here, where we pause to see, again, are we doing it in the right way? Is it having the effect we want in terms of improving services to meet residents' needs and demands in an increasingly complex way? Is it building our internal capacity to use those tools in the way that in which we can use human judgment more effectively, because time is given back effectively to us to do that? And is it helping the overall cost effectiveness and efficiency of the council? And then we also have scrutiny built in. So there's a whole number of layers which are built into the way that this is brought forward, which is purposeful and intentional, coming back to earlier points of recognising the risks, recognising the dangers, but ensuring that we mitigate against them, but also open up that space so that we can deliver against our values in a better way for our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Brocklesby. Councillor Buckler, did you want to follow up on, I know you asked about environmental impact. I don't know whether that was covered adequately, but any other points?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I would like to come back. Firstly, talking about the 160 use cases that have come up, I think it's an excellent idea that each authority comes up with their sort of top priorities, and that you all pull what comes from that sounds sensible and very reassuring to hear. On reserve funding, what percentage of our reserve funding are you proposing to allocate in case of need? And in what circumstances do you see it being utilised? Now, talking about the environmental impact and solar and wind farms. Now, there is serious and real concerns from across the board about, large-scale solar installations across the Welsh countryside. And as we know, it's UK-wide, this, and also wind farms. We have to, in all consciousness, and I share these concerns deeply, we have to come up with a strategy that doesn't destroy our countryside and enables us to utilise these the advantages of AI. And I think it should be, really seriously considered as a council that we need to have a much better strategy. So thoughts on those, please.
Thank you, Councillor Buckler. So I don't know who wants to pick that up. I'm also conscious of if we are able to keep our responses reasonably concise to make sure we've got sufficient time for all the reports this morning. Councillor Brocklesby?
I'll leave Pete Davis to talk about the percentage of our reserves. It is, of course, an invest for redesign, earmarked reserves, so it is being used precisely in the way we'd want to. You make a very valid point, Councillor Buckler, and I would agree with you. I would come back to an earlier point about seeing ourselves as part of a much wider governance enabling structure of local government, regional government, national, Welsh and UK governments. You'll know, Councillor Butler, that we are part of Cardiff Capital Region. Don't have to declare an interest here, it's well known. I'm chair of Cardiff Capital Region. We are within that part of an AI zone. We are working closely with both governments to develop the structures for that AI zone. One of the investments of CCR Energy is into the Uskmouth data centre, which is a brownfield site in Newport, but which will serve the whole of the county and beyond. And if we, well, it's not a choice, is it? Embedded in the values of the council is that we work in partnership, we work as collaborators, but also in order to really benefit from what is good about AI and in order to work in ways which are sustainable and true to our principles of tackling climate change and addressing nature crisis, we have to work in partnership. And this is no exception. So we would be looking at brownfield sites. We were looking at way in which we could harness data centres from elsewhere. We're certainly not in any position to start building our own data centres, which is the point that Paul was making earlier about how we can, while safeguarding ourselves, our values and our ways of working, how we can collaborate with bigger organisations or collaborate with partners so that we can meet the triple bottom line, which I think you're referring to, economic, social and environment. And that is core to everything that we do and is built into the community and corporate plan.
Thank you. It's such an important area, and I'm sure this will be something we'll come back to again and again. And just building on Councillor Buckler's point about the impact on energy use just of accessing an AI inquiry on a Google search being roughly 20 to 30 times what a standard Google search is. I think I was not sufficiently aware of this until my son pointed it out to me a few months ago, and it's made me very aware of it. So I'm just as much at fault as everybody else, if fault is the word. But even creating an AI image, a simple AI image, which is something we've probably all experimented with because it's a bit of fun sometimes, or sometimes it's work-based. That a simple AI image requires roughly 2 kilowatt hours of electricity, which is in round terms about the equivalent of fully charging an empty smartphone just to create one image. And our work phones, and I guess this is true right across the organization, are they're either programmed or they're not deprogrammed to automatically move us into an AI search when we move into Google. So we're, if you like, internally within our organization, I mean, we can do what we like in a sense with our own kit, but there's quite a lot we could do as an organization to say, look, let's not allow any use of AI at any time, because it's sometimes just the first thing that pops up on the search, and actually to control the amount of AI imaging because of what I've just explained. I mean, it's just, we would be driving our own demand so high. It's a really important area. But look, I want to move on with questions, if I may. I just thought that was, of significant interest. Peter, were you trying to come in on that quickly?
Yeah, just to re-emphasize the point of earlier. So I think clearly there will be responsibilities put on, I guess, technology companies and will be. And I think through their own motivations, they will inevitably have to drive to find more effective, efficient and innovative ways of generating that compute power. That's happening already. Paul's already talked to, obviously, the silicone being produced by Amazon and the means by which that can equally reduce carbon footprint. But then on our side of the fence, it's not just a case of us being just completely complacent to the impact, as you've rightly highlighted, Chair. It is, in fact, being responsible in the use of AI, and the AI policy that I've talked to will be a really important component part of that. Some of that will be clearly in the space of policy guidance. Some of it, to your point, will be conversations with the SRS in terms of where we can actually put some of the guardrails in, so that people aren't. I know you've given an example, for example, of an image being created. It becomes even more eye-watering if somebody produces an AI video, for example. So, but acting responsibly is very important in that space. To the final point, I think, Councillor Buckler, the question of reserve use. If I think I got your question right, let me just check it back. So, I think your question is in terms of what proportion of the total reserve call through this report, as to what proportion that represents of our reserves, or is your question about the £200,000 of that £851,000 we're looking to draw down from reserve, that is looking very much to act as a support mechanism for services?
Well, I would say thank you for highlighting that, Peter, but I would say, what would you say is the most pertinent thing that our residents need to know about that?
So I think, as the report highlights, we're drawing from the investor redesign reserve, which I think it's actually important to highlight. We also have an IT reserve. I'm not looking to draw down on the IT reserve here, because this is not just a technology solution. This is very much in terms of what's at the heart of the investor redesign reserve. So we're taking one-off call from that reserve, taking an 851,000 call on a balance of reserve that's running at 1.2 million at the moment. But in broader context, we're carrying £20 million, circa £20 million of what I would describe as usable revenue reserves. And I guess do the maths, I guess, in terms of 851k as a proportion of that. But it is ultimately a necessary one-off investment for the reasons that we've discussed through this meeting. And we will get opportunities, of course. I know that you will be, I think, at your next meeting, Chair, looking to pore over the revenue outturn report. And I think we will be afforded the opportunity to then, as we do every year, look at reserve replenishment and rationalisation. So I think we just take those two things hand in hand.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Chair. All three speakers mentioned single view of a child, bringing together data from lots of different sources into one place. Clearly, it makes a great deal of sense, but it does raise the issue of confidentiality. This stuff is already confidential, but it's even more important that we keep it that way. So the report mentions the confidentiality, but it also mentions that it should be transparent and accessible. Clearly, there was a well, at least a perceived tension there on my part. What reassurance can be offered that tension can be resolved? And if I can, before you come back, go on to a very different sort of question, really to satisfy my own sense of curiosity. Data centres. Mary-Anne mentioned we're not in a position to build our own data centre, but that's not to say that one couldn't be built within our own borders of Monmouthshire as a collaborative process. As I understand it, one issue with data centres is they require a great deal of water. Down in Sudbrook, we're pumping millions of gallons of water a day into the River Severn from the pumping station. Some of it, of course, going down to Mega Brewery, but a lot of it straight back into the river. Has any thought ever been given to whether that might be an appropriate site for a data centre sometime in the future, both from sort of a geographical logistics point of view and from a business case, or is that just cloud cuckoo land, total fantasy on my part? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Strong. And who wants to pick up on those? Yes, Paul.
Thank you for the question.
Do you want to just flick your phone on, your microphone on?
Yeah, press that.
Yeah. Is it not coming?
Try it again. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I didn't see it.
Okay. No problem. Again, very good question. So, in terms of the access control, so this is about ensuring that the right staff have the correct levels of access to the data. So that is in place today with the various different data sets so that the right staff can access the appropriate data. What the AI Foundation references in the paper, that's effectively the guardrails. So that's what we call the RBAC, which is being put in place, which is the role-based access control. So in effect, that mirrors what the different staff in the different teams have access to today. It mirrors to ensure that when that data is collated, that individuals will have access to that data that they're permitted to. At the moment, you'll have individual staff who have to go to lots of different data repositories to collect that data. The ultimate goal is that if you have one practitioner dealing with a child, they can then source the data, whether it be education data, social services, it could be health, police data and so on, effectively all coming into a single repository so that they can get that single view and help make effectively decisions and do their job. So it is a very important element, and that's one of the fundamentals that needs to be built and tested, and we have to have reassurance that that's in place before we go live.
To the question of data centres and Sudbury water supply.
I'll come in off that. I'll also just add just one further comment to Paul's input, because going back to your actual question, you were asking just the question just in terms of the tension with a comment in the report, just in terms of openness and transparency. So just on the point of openness and transparency, it is within the confines of what Paul's just described. What you're looking to do is you're looking to afford those that have access legitimately being abundantly, having that information abundantly available to them so that they can take informed decisions. And the ability, obviously, as has been described, of bringing that all together. So hopefully that just explains that bit in terms of the tension. It's not about giving ubiquitous access to confidential information. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
It's need to know basis. Estonia, Peter, Councillor Strong. Something that Estonia has developed quite some time before us. They became a digital nation as a pioneer, where they built in shared data sets. But there was always the principle of, while the data set was 360, you accessed what you needed to know. And what I think as a nation rather than a county, where we can really learn from them is the holder of the right is always the citizen. So it's the citizen always giving permission in the first place for the use of that data across this 360. And I think that's somewhere where we need to be working for in the UK. We can't do alone in in a county because of the permissions and the legal frameworks that need to be in place.
Okay, I'd like to move us on to the second question that Councillor Strong asked about the possible locations. That might be a little adventurous for this meeting, but it's possibly one worth taking away.
Yeah, so I think Paul's already highlighted and explained, I guess, in terms of the efficiencies that are driven by working with an Amazon Web Service versus trying to do something yourself. And obviously, we've trod a path, as some members may or may not know, going right back to when the SRS was first conceived, as I said, 14, 15 years ago. And data centres were established and invested in Blenavon. Things evolved from there. Data centres were then transferred over to Vantage, formerly NGD, with an Imperial Park in Newport, and now we've made that further transition now up into the cloud, because it is lowest cost denominator, most effective and efficient use of. The point, however, regards to Sudbrook, I'm familiar with it. I know that Ian Hockham, our energy lead, decarbonisation lead, has brought some work around that previously, working with the likes of National Grid and Scottish Power and the like, looking at, I guess, the potential opportunities that might present. It was a good few years ago, mind you, and I think you raise a relevant and pertinent point. I will take that point away. And just to understand, I guess, possibly, and I guess Marianne within the throes of Cardiff Capital Region, and some of their sectoral focus as to whether there is something in that. So thank you for the point. I'll take it away.
I suppose other members of the committee may share my reluctance to make Jeff Bezos and any richer than he already is, just as much as Bill Gates. But we live in a world which is the real world, and we do have to work with it. So thank you. Councillor Strong, was there any follow-up you wanted to those questions?
Well, thanks for the reply related to Sudbrook. Who knows what might be required in the future, but it's good to know it's not actually been totally ruled out and that there is a scope for investigation there. On the sort of access, I'm sure you appreciate the issue there. I mean, at the moment, you seem to be saying that somebody looking for information from different sources has to go through several gateways. Now you'd only need to get through one. There might be a very, very secure gateway, but if you do breach it, there's a potential for havoc, especially as I guess in the past, even when you get through the gateway, you have to ask for something very specific or lots of different specific things. With AI, once you're in, you just type in a name and you get everything very, very quickly. So, there are real concerns there, but I'm reassured that thorough, use the word testing, will take place. But I guess in the end, nothing is totally foolproof. But we have to do everything we can to get as far as we can in that direction. Thank you.
That's good to hear. It's rare that we hear politicians saying that nobody is foolproof. So thank you for...
I don't regard myself as a politician.
Right.
I'm a community representative.
There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to look to the next question from Councillor Newell.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks to colleagues at the front of the chamber there. That was a fascinating report, a very detailed report. And so it's going to be difficult to absorb all that information at once. But a lot of the points I wanted to bring up have been clarified already. I've just got two sort of areas that I'd like to ask about. This is, in inverted commas, an investment. So any investment, we expect a return. So I wondered, with our speakers at the front, what their priorities would be in getting a positive return for our council and public money investment, and how will they report back the success of that investment in short term, medium term and long term? And have we got the scope to move the goalposts if we see within 12 months that something's not working? And we may need to shift things if we've got the facility to do that, because the AI boom is just beginning. I mean, we're just scratching the surface here. I'm learning on the job, as we all are with this new technology. So I'm interested about how we're going to realise how the success is being measured, how that's going to be reported back to us, and how we adjust. And I was grateful to colleagues that our staff workforce, especially the desk-based, are going to be really worried. It doesn't matter whatever we do to reassure them that their jobs are not going to be lost. can we guarantee that we're going to be in regular communication with all of our staff, regular updates, just to reassure them that they're not being replaced? And it even goes for us councillors, I suppose. Everyone, we just need that going forward as well. And again, if we just have regular updates, that'd be great.
Thank you, Councillor Newell. And Peter, did you want to pick up?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think I'll cover off on the first element. I'm just looking up and across through the chamber. And I think if Matt Gatehouse is happy to sort of come back in and cover off on the second aspect in terms of the workforce element, because he's certainly best placed to do so, as I touched on earlier. So just in terms of Councillor Newell's first point, I think it's an important point. We think we've touched on it in various ways through the debate today. It's important to highlight when we've, I think, referred to stage gates, and in terms of the release of investment, that applies at all stages. And it goes back to Marianne's earlier point in terms of the double loop on this. So we shouldn't be looking to release this investment until we're confident with the initial work that's been done that we are actually targeting that investment, that things can actually can give a commensurate level of benefit and outcome. That's not necessarily financial, but it will be. But it will also be the benefits that we've talked to, those beneficial outcomes and impact, either to drive productivity and efficiency gain within the council to allow us to do focus our time onto better and more complex things, which is what we should be doing as professionals, or in fact introducing projects and programs of work that actually lead to demonstrable benefit to residents. And it could be a number of other things in different weightings. But the stage gating process ensures that as we're working these up, that we are clear, that we are prioritising the right things, that the value and benefit framework identifies those benefits and gains to be made, and then we can actually track those through the process of implementation and, to Marianne's earlier point, beyond, and making sure that the impact outcome element, that important bit, is both being captured but being equally tracked beyond the point of implementation. We've got a variety of governance arrangements in place around that. Marianne's already talked to SRS Strategic Board. I chair a digital data and steering group from within the council, and I guess the other LA partners have their own internal governance arrangements. Within the SRS side, there is also a business and collaboration board that sits below the strategic board. I sit on that as a deputy chief exec, along with my deputy chief exec counterparts from across the other local authority partners, and all of that governance looks to preside over and maintain oversight of progress. In terms of the Scrutiny Committee's role, I think that's something for the committee to give some active consideration to. The only point I would make is that I think at your next cycle, you're looking over self-assessment. I think in the September meeting, you're taking a specific look at the enabling strategies and the progress is being made in delivering out on those. The digital and data strategy is one of those enabling strategies, and clearly the investment that we're putting in here around AI and data will be a very key and core feature of that as we move forward. So regardless, the Scrutiny Committee will have its lens in. If it wishes to obviously take even closer look, that's left to you, Chair, and the committee. So I think that's Councillor Leo's first question. Maybe Matt, to save my voice, if anything. Okay, Chair, to hand across to Matt.
Matt, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks for the question, Councillor Newell. For the benefit of those watching at home or the recording back later on, Matt Gatehouse, Chief Officer for People, Performance and Partnerships. And Councillor Newell, I think you raise a point there that many people around the globe are thinking of at the moment in terms of the impact of AI on the workforce. And holding that people brief, it's something which is continuously front and centre of my mind. There's a couple of pieces we can sort of highlight there. One, through our people strategy, we've committed to engaging and taking forward our work on workforce planning. And we're calling that the future-focused workforce, to understand the skills, capability that our workforce need, not just now, but will need in 3, 5, 10 years to make sure that we can prepare that workforce. Our people are our most important asset. You think about the skills they possess, empathy, problem solving, Those will not be replaced by AI. AI will supplement and help and speed up. And we often use a phrase of taking the robot out of the human. And it's using this technology to do some of the things that will slow staff down, some of the things that may be more frustrating, but actually not necessarily the biggest and most creative value-adding elements of their job, to speed them up with the back office, admin, and so on. So we will continue to engage with our staff. We're working, and we will continue to work very closely with colleagues in trade unions on this piece through our responsibilities under the social partnership duty. We will continue to train and develop our staff, but it's also really important to stress that, yes, jobs will change and evolve as they have done throughout the entire history of the economy. We have a natural turnover, as all organisations do, of around about 8% a year. That always offers us an opportunity as a colleague leaves to think, do we need to redesign that job to recognise how it can be done differently with technology? So there are lots of opportunities to do this sensitively in dialogue with our colleagues and in dialogue with trade unions, while still bringing back the benefits from it that will be experienced by our communities in terms of better outcomes and better impacts of the work we deliver.
Thank you, Matt. That's really helpful. And I just wonder if, Councillor Newell, if you had any follow-up.
No, thank you, Chair. Those are two great answers, and I look forward to just following up in the future as to how this project proceeds. I'm sorry about my dog bark, and I'm working at home today, but no, thanks, and thanks to everyone. Yeah,
we couldn't hear. Well, I couldn't hear your dog anyway. Councillor Brocklesby, I think you were trying to come in.
Thank you. Rest assured, Councillor Newell, as a human being, you are irreplaceable, and it will be up to the electorate, not AI, to determine whether we will be replaced as councillors. So don't worry on that one. I really wanted to come back on that return on investment. We can't look purely at money on this one. That is important. It is built into the whole design. It is meant to save money. It's investing to save. But much of the return on investment, and I think it's quite useful to look at that way of thinking about economic return, which takes in the social and environmental benefits into its calculations. What we're looking at and what we can track, because this is not the feel-good factor, although it will be part of it for individual staff members, it's through increased productivity, our ability to deal with much more complex cases, and increasing demand, particularly on those services which take a huge amount of resources, including financial resources, housing, social care, education, additional learning needs, absolutely core to maintaining stability and cohesion in society, let alone core services for our council. So it's looking and tracking productivity on there. We know early intervention is cost saving. Early intervention is not cheap. But what it does do is it ensures further down the line the costs for keeping an adult in hospital or keeping a child in care when there are other foster with kin or foster in a foster home, for example, would benefit the child, benefit the adult, but also reduce the burden on our services. It allows for better targeting of resources, which is, again, much more effective and efficient. And it directly supports service sustainability because it creates and maintains those conditions for future efficiencies. Coming back to that point that I think we've been making consistently throughout, this is a double feedback loop. And as soon as you've got one set of tools and systems and mechanisms in place, you don't stop there because the pace of change isn't going to stop. We have to be ready and agile to respond to that pace of change because we have those mechanisms, systems and processes in place, which allows us to look at further efficiencies, but more importantly, to ensure that it's rooted in that value-based, human-centeredness that Matt talked about and Pete talked about. So really important question, and one that we should never stop asking.
Thank you. It is such a big area that we move into as soon as we sort of open areas. If at all possible, Councillor Broxwood, if you could turn your mic off. Thank you. Yeah, no problem. For example, the absolutely important areas of social and environmental aspects being part of the returns, just as you've just touched on, value-based human responses. However, those are not the reasons that we're making very significant investment in AI. We're not making those investments because of the social and environmental benefits. And it's certainly not a case that's been made that they're being made for value-based and human benefits. So I think we need to kind of match up what our expectations are with what we're going into the investment with. I can see you're engaging with this one. Very briefly, Councillor Brockesby.
Very briefly, I would push back slightly against that, in that you'll know it's a public and legal requirement through the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act that indeed we do look at this on every intervention that we make through our integrated impact assessment. We also, through our budget building, of which this is part, we have built in looking at social environment as part of how we've built that budget and part of how we look at resources. So I think I would argue that it is implicit. We can argue about whether it should be more explicit, but it's certainly implicit in this report and the way that we are building with our colleagues through the SRS our approach to digital and data management and the use of AI tools.
Yeah, thank you. I don't want to turn this into an ongoing discussion on just this one point, but I would stick with my point, which is that the investment, and certainly the report makes no comment at all about AI being a driver for social and environmental returns. It may be that you can expand on that, but that's not what the report is saying. So just moving on to the next question, which is from Councillor Pavia.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just on the single view of the child and predictive analytics. Now, first live use case is always the most sensitive, and predictive analytics can be applied to children's data, and I think it's been drawn out in the integrated impact assessment there, which flags up potential bias, over-reliance or misinterpretation as real risks. Now, in the impact assessment, there's some general narrative about mitigations, but what concrete safeguards can prevent an AI generated risk flag from being introduced as introducing or influencing a safeguarding decision inappropriately? I'd be really interested. I appreciate. I can't see who's in the chamber. I don't know whether anyone from social care is there to help answer that, but and you may have to come back to me on that. So I do understand that in relation to that question. My second question has a data protection impact assessment being completed on this piece of work, and if it has, will members be able to see that in due course? And finally, Chair, my last question is on alignment with national frameworks. Now, the report builds the case around obviously the council's own digital and data strategy and the partnership in relation to SRS, which is on a regional footprint. And I assume the element of the single view of the child is part of the region's replacement platform for WCIS, the Welsh Community Care Information System. I assume it's part of that platform and the development of that platform. But what the report doesn't say, or it's quite largely silent on, is the national Welsh frameworks that govern this space. And I'm not talking just about sort of policy and the digital and data strategy for health and social care, but more so the frameworks are being developed out there. I'm just thinking of DISC, for example, Digital and Social Care Cymru, which is a WLGA-led national data transformation framework, and that's looking to try and coordinate a national approach on the use of digital data and technology, not just tech adoption, but culture, skills, and systems. So how are we drawing on those national frameworks so we can contribute to a coordinated national approach rather than another fragmented local or regional initiative? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pavia. And who wants to? I saw, Paul, you turning around just on the first of those questions. I don't know whether that was something you wanted to pick up.
I'll come in with your last point, Paul Pavia. Data Cymru has been reabsorbed into the WLGA. I know this because I sit on the board of Data Cymru, and it is part of our strategy to ensure that we are fully involved in local authority discussions at all levels. I now sit on the Data and Performance Board of the WLGA, and with Councillor Petruni, I'm a spokesperson to ensure that we are linked into national local authority across the whole of Wales, as well as through SRS. I know SRS has its own coordination mechanisms with the WLGA and its new performance board, and we will continue to do that. You make a very important point, I think, on something as important as this, which is important on the level of data protection, of citizen protection, as well as how we use and work with this data for the benefit of our residents. We cannot, under any circumstances, think we can do this on our own, or that we should not be coordinating through the governance frameworks at every level of government. So I thank you for that question.
Yeah, and on the safeguards issue and the potential for bad actors to access information, I wondered if you want to speak up on that, Paul?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the first question, I guess my interpretation of the question as well was whether or not there could be mistakes made by the AI engine as to the risk assessment. So just to re-clarify, the AI engine is effectively an advanced method for pattern recognition and so on. So it's utilising the data sets that already exist today from within the authorities, plus any external data sets that we can leverage to improve the possible decision making. The decision making will still and always lie with the practitioner. So they will evaluate the data that's being presented to them in the dashboard that's generated from the AI engine, utilising the data sets that exist today, the trusted data sets. So at no time will the AI model take accountability and make a decision on behalf of the practitioner. So it is always, as was mentioned earlier, there will be a human in the loop for any decision processing that's made in such extraordinarily important service areas. The DPIA point, yes, I believe that we will be able to share that. So I'll take that away. And then the regional point, just quickly, what we're doing across the 4 authorities effectively is quite new. While Single View of a Child and other services or similar services that have been implemented in other authorities around the UK, they've been implemented in a single authority sort of manner. What we're doing here is we're actually implementing something that potentially could help lives within the 4 authorities. An example of that would be if you had a child who lived within the Monmouthshire constituency, but perhaps went to school across the border in another local authority. At the moment, you would have to put in a data request and then wait to receive that information back in terms of education data. Within this tool set, you will actually have the data, all of the data that's available, be it education as well, available to the practitioners so that they can actually react quickly to the data that's available.
Thank you, Paul. That's really a very helpful point at the end there. Councillor Pavey, did you have any follow-up, or were you content with that?
Yeah, only briefly, Chair, and just to say, obviously that the professional social worker involved in the decision making is obviously crucial, but we know how stretched social workers are, the cases that they carry. There's always a risk under pressure that they may lean in heavily on AI. But, if you say the assurances are there in terms of the contained data and contained data sets, then you've given those assurances. So thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And Peter.
Thanks, Chair. Just one final quick input. I'm just conscious of time, and I know you've got another 3 reports on the agenda. So just to add some further comfort to the other point that Marianne came back in on, it's worth just highlighting that we're not alone, and even in Wales, in the confines of Wales, in terms of progressing work around something consistent around a single view of the child. You may be aware of that in your wider work anyway. But we are conscious of those other those other pieces of work being undertaken by other local authorities, health boards, etc. Some of them are of a narrower definition of scope than what we're looking at. Some of them are at different stages of maturity. Some even at concept stage, we're a lot further forward than that. But I think the point I just wanted to echo is that through the networks that Marianne's referred to, and I guess the digital networks that I guess officers are equally involved with, ADSS in terms of the Association of Director of Social Services and the information sharing that goes between them, that point in terms of sharing good practice, and it goes both ways, is really important. And being able to identify, I guess, how other local authorities in Wales or outside of Wales have adopted the use of AI and data in innovative ways. We should be looking to keep on top of that so that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel over and over ourselves. So it's just important, just an important final point to make.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter. And just a couple of points to wrap this particular session up. And it may be that the wording of this in the report would be less than clear to any reader, but 3.37, the statement that AI cannot and will not replace professional judgment, I'm not sure that's borne out by what we know. It may be that what you mean is professional decisions, but AI is clearly making all sorts of professional judgments, and in many cases, the benefit is that it's doing so more accurately, more quickly, and for 24/7. But it's just the wording of that might be helpful to clarify. 3.38, the statement of not to bypass normal workforce processes. Many people would say, well, why are you doing it then? So just to flag a couple of points that struck me as potentially not what is intended. It's a very helpful and very important report, and thank you everyone for the questions and the responses. I thought, and I hope colleagues agree, that it was worth us spending sufficient time on this one. I do think it's, as I mentioned earlier, might be a seminal moment for the council in terms of when we look back in 5 years and see what actually this has led to. So I hope you would indulge your patience in the amount of time we've allocated to this. I am going to suggest we now take a 10-minute break, and after that we've got 3 more reports, which I intend that we bring in within 1 hour. And again, thanks very much indeed for everybody who has taken part in the first part. And we'll start again in 10 minutes. So that is to say at 11:52. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I really appreciate the opportunity to come before the Scrutiny Committee. I found it very useful, enlightening, and I think will take away a lot of the suggestions, insights that our colleagues have given us. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, welcome back, everybody, to the performance and overview meeting. I can see many of you rejoining as we start, so we'll crack on. And welcome also to colleagues, officers who have joined us for the next report, which is looking at an update on extremely important aspects of the PRS, the Pupil Referral Services. And the report itself is one that's full of very important information, which we will have read. And I'm going to ask colleagues to provide us with any key points from the report, and then we'll move straight into questions. So over to you, Morwenna. Please introduce yourselves as you speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, I'm Morwenna Wagstaff, Head of Service for Inclusion within Monmouthshire. And good morning, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity for us to bring this report. As Chair has said, hopefully you have all read the report, but it provides members with an overview of Cysgod y Coed, which is Monmouthshire's education other than at school service, and it sets out current position, the recent progress and the key challenges facing the service. The service was previously known as the Pupil Referral Service and has undergone significant transformation over the last 2 years. I won't go into the detail, but the report also reflects the progress we've made since the review that we carried out in 2024 and the recent Eston inspection in the last academic year. Overall, the report highlights a service that is evolving rapidly in response to significant system pressures while continuing to support some of the most vulnerable children in Monmouthshire. We invite members to consider both the progress achieved and the strategic challenges ahead, and our desire to ensure that the service remains sustainable, effective and responsive to need. And at this point, both myself and Jake Parkinson, Head of Cysgod y Coed, are here to answer any questions that you may have.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Morwenna. And opening the report to questions from colleagues in the chamber and online. And while I see the first question come out before I could even get one in there. So, Councillor Strong.
So you caught us on the hop there. It's such a quick move into questions. Just one really, and I'm not sure how close you guys are to the front line. I'm not actually teaching pupils in what I used to call the PRU. But what I wanted to ask is, I was pleased to see that you have various alternative qualifications offered to pupils, because your figures prove beyond any doubt that GCSE is absolutely not suitable for a majority of them for whatever reasons. And even if they do scrape a low grade, going through a GCSE course, from my experience, would not have been a positive educational experience. So the alternatives are important. But I wanted to ask, how confident are the staff in the PRU that the alternatives are fit for purpose? Because again, my experience, and some of it is from a while back now, before I retired from active teaching, was that some of them, again, were in different ways no better as an educational experience than the GCSE. Some of them were very bureaucratic, some were very mundane, and some were just not exciting and interesting there to engage pupils. Yeah. So are you happy with the alternative pathways? I'm sure you're selecting the best ones that are available, but are the ones that are available good enough, or does the Welsh Government need to be looking at more alternatives or improving the alternatives that are already there? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Strong. My name's Jake Parkinson. As Morwenna said, I am the head of the Monmouthshire Pupil Referral Service. So my role is being in both the centres with pupils on a day-to-day basis and supporting pupils online. I think you raise a really important point about qualifications across Wales. And as you all know, we're in a period of significant change in terms of qualifications in Wales. One thing that will be very beneficial to the service is the introduction of the new VCSEs, which are for first teaching in September 2027. So they are the vocational GCSEs, a pathway that replaces some of the old BTEC qualifications, etc., and are made for Wales. They have courses such as animal care, mechanics, travel and tourism, sport, things that are really hands-on. So we're really looking forward to all of the learning to be able to provide those from September. So that means now we're kind of in a bit of an interim position in terms of the vocational qualifications that we're leading with our pupils. And as you quite rightly said, we worked really hard with other PRUs in the local area, so Newport and Torvine namely, to look at the qualifications that are the most engaging, that pupils get the most out of, that are the most practical and hands-on in lots of different ways. So we are happy with the ones that we're delivering now, but I think we are very mindful that these new VCSEs are coming very soon, and really looking forward to being able to pick the suites that are going to most benefit our learners. And a big part of that comes around pupil voice and looking at the cohort we have year on year, what we feel the strengths of that cohort is, what will engage that cohort, and also listening to them at the end of year 9, trying to maybe slightly replicate that options process that mainstream pupils go through, is where we give them a slight choice. We can't give the choice of 15 different subjects like at a school, but we may be able to give a choice of a few different subjects that may really engage them. So, for example, this year we deliver health and social care to a cohort of pupils, and we deliver a BTEC sport qualification to another cohort of pupils. Again, those are the qualifications that their voice has kind of led to wanting to be able to follow, in addition to those maths and English GCSEs. As you again quite rightly say, the new GCSEs in Wales are heavy going for our pupils, and they are quite challenging. So we're working through with other PRUs how to best support our cohort of learners through those new qualifications.
Thanks for that. So the short answer, you're reasonably happy with what you got at the moment, but you're not sure about what's coming over the horizon with the VGSEs. You have to wait and see what they're like. I have to say, I'm not entirely full of confidence that they will be better than what we've got at the moment, but that's just bitter experience of how that level of exam has been, and exam course has been changed over many years. I mean, I'm showing how ancient I am. I remember when it used to be O-levels and CSEs, and within CSEs we used to have what was called a Mode 3 CSE, where basically the staff designed their own course, and the exam board just checked it reached the appropriate standard. We also had systems where, within a mainstream comprehensive, a certain cohort of pupils would go to tech for 4 days a week and come back just to do maths and English, and many of them were very successful and become tradesmen, self-employed tradesmen in their own right. That was something that was destroyed by the national curriculum, and I'm just hoping that there isn't further damage done by the new qualifications that come in.
I mean, from our perspective, we're hoping that they are wider than ever before. We've never had qualifications, or in my kind of working career, like motor mechanics as a qualification, animal care, construction in the built environment. They are really quite vocational in their nature. So although, as you say, we haven't had the full information on them yet, the kind of quick guides are out and some initial specifications are out. However, we haven't had the professional learning linked with them. The suite of qualifications, the breadth of them, and the vocational nature of them, hopefully, and maybe I'm an eternal optimist, may be beneficial for our learners moving forward. We've had to use BTEC Level 1 as a vehicle for this previously, and this is all brand new, which may be very positive.
Great. I'm sure you'll be back again, and you'll be able to give us an update of experience once they're in place. Thank you.
Yeah, and Jake, your enthusiasm comes across so strongly as well as your voice. I actually think without your microphone, councillors sitting at home would be able to hear you. So thank you. It's great to get that level of enthusiasm coming across for the work that you do. Great. So, Councillor Buckler.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all of you for being here. It's a fascinating and involved subject. The Vulnerable Learners report repeatedly highlights increasing demand and capacity pressures in all the services involved in additional learning needs, and the outcomes remain concerning despite significant investment. We have the dichotomy of the medical children who are going through medical processes or have long-going medical conditions. We have additional learning needs and excluded pupils, all very different. And how do we marry them up and actually give the best outcomes for each group? Only 35.5% of achieved at least one level 2 qualification, and only 12.9% achieved a level 2 maths and English. And maths, that is the cornerstone, as we know, of being able to communicate, of being able to operate in an adult world. And no additional learning need bespoke pupils achieved this measure. So there are serious concerns. We have medical provision attendance only 31%. That seems really low and extremely concerning. And overall attendance is 47%. I completely and fully understand what we're all trying to achieve here, and I applaud it. But there are serious, shortcomings. And can you sort of give us a broader picture on how we're tackling this? Thank you.
Can I just add to that, Councillor Buckler, because I think you raise such an important area, which is about all the work that is done, which is so important. What are the outcomes and what do they look like? A recent report indicates that in Wales that 29% of school leavers, I was staggered when I looked at it, 29% of school leavers are what was described as functionally illiterate. And I just wondered, moving beyond simple percentages of passing exams and sitting and what grades they achieve, which is obviously a big part of it, are you able to describe in similar terms just how those young people coming through the PRS are able to present with functional literacy, for example, as something that can be so critical to their moving forward successfully with their lives?
Thank you both. Yeah, there's lots of kind of different areas there, I think, to address. So I suppose the first part that Councillor Buckler discussed was the outcomes for pupils. And I think that if you look at the outcomes at GCSE, they are broadly in line with similar provisions, although they are obviously below what we'd expect in a mainstream provision. We know that those outcomes do need to be strengthened, which is why we have worked really hard this year to try and strengthen the curriculum offer that we are delivering to the pupils, but also the provision that we're offering to the young people. So actually just yesterday we opened up 2 in-person provisions for our medical unwell pupils that we're trying to engage them in a longer bit of face-to-face provision in 2 centres in both the north and the south of the county. So I think the work that we have done around supporting staff to understand and know these new qualifications and to be able to deliver them effectively, the work we're doing around our review points, looking at the quality of our teaching and learning and seeing that is making progress, the work that we're doing with other pupil referral units to explore how they're delivering these qualifications and trying to learn from the developments that they have made, and also the way that our provision is actually set up will hopefully this year show us that we've had some improved outcomes on those that you shared at the beginning of the question. And they're linked into attendance. So our unwell pupils are too unwell to come to school. We must recognise that. And the provision at the moment only allows them to achieve 50% attendance. They have half-day sessions. So if we times 31 by 2, it's kind of 62% if you're looking at the whole. Again, that is low, which is one of the reasons why we have developed this new in-person face-to-face provision to allow more hours for those people to access in a more flexible way. And often for people who are unwell and anxious about school, the online learning that we were delivering can be more difficult for them to access. So all of those things we think will help us improve. And actually, in terms of the attendance improvement, since I've been in post now, we've seen the PRU attendance rise by 10%, which I think is a significant increase. And we've seen the overall attendance raised by 3%, which again is a significant increase in that time. And obviously there's much more work to do with that. But again, that PRU attendance is in line with other provisions of the same nature across the country. And as you quite rightly pointed out as well, Councillor Neil, that work on literacy is absolutely key. So we've engaged with the LA School Improvement Service, we've engaged with other PRUs, we've engaged with as many different professional learning opportunities as we can to really make sure that literacy is at the heart of the curriculum we offer and develop that professional learning for our staff. I firstly understand literacy deficiencies that young pupils may have coming into our service. Often that can be a reason for disengagement, which can lead to exclusion. So identifying that on entry through a really, really robust testing system that we've got in place, and through being able to really understand through kind of working with other agencies and the education psychology team, etc., what the needs of those pupils are. Really good professional learning for staff to be able to do those interventions, to be able to kind of give really good high quality teaching to address those. We hope, therefore, will raise the kind of levels of functional literacy in our young people as they leave. And I suppose another aside to kind of the point about outcomes, obviously outcomes at GCSE and those kind of percentages are really, really important. But for this group of vulnerable young people, actually outcomes sometimes can be measured differently, and more qualitative outcomes for some of our young people are really important. So we have a way that we capture kind of a pen portrait of a pupil on entry to our service, and then a pen portrait at the end of the academic year or when they leave. And for a pupil that has not been in school for 3 years and has been afraid to even come out of their bedroom and meet a professional, to be engaging in, for example, a provision with other young people on a primary school site with a small farm environment and sitting an entry-level qualification in English is actually huge progress. A young person that has been excluded 52 times from their secondary school in a year and has come to us and has been able to be there every day, have no exclusions, engage positively with staff, make friends with peers, and get ready to sit some qualifications. Again, that is progress. So it's measured in a different way, but I think we mustn't forget, for some of these young people, that progress is really important to measure and recognise over the course of their time with us.
Councillor Buckler, did you want to follow up on any of those points?
I'd like to sort of to find out how long the in-person sessions have been instituted. I'm quite surprised they haven't been sort of done in that as a priority before, and what changed and why. I think you're quite right to say, and only by communicating directly with these pupils face to face is a way to engage. And how do you see that improving in the future? Because obviously that seems to be key, because you're getting results because of this.
So yeah, I think that's a really important point, Councillor Buckler. I think that the rapid increase in pupil numbers led to the initial decision to have that learning happen online. And Morwenna may add more to this because it was slightly before my time being in post. But I think we went from 25 pupils in September 2022 to 120 pupils at the end of July 2025. So that rise in such a short amount of time, when the learning used to happen kind of one-to-one in the home for the medical pupils, led to the service looking at ways in which they could sustainably, and in a way that was kind of value for money, put up a provision for those increased numbers. It's been a priority for me this year. It was part of the school development plan when I first took over from the service in September, and in this half term we've kind of opened up those spaces. Logistics of that and actual physical spaces are difficult to get that up and running. We've also had kind of the Essen inspection in the autumn term, which had lots of things that we had to kind of remedy from that initially. So I think that it definitely has been a priority. It's taken time to happen. We know, as you quite rightly say, it's the right provision moving forward. But the online model was something that was in place due to that rapid rise in numbers in quite a short period of time that just needed to respond to that increased need that the service was seeing in the medical population.
Yes, please do.
Thank you, Jake. And yeah, just to sort of add a little bit to that, post-COVID, we saw that significant rise in EOTAS Medical, and it was around that time that I became head of service for inclusion and inherited the pupil referral service. And at that time, absolutely, we kind of stood up the online teaching model as a way of meeting the need across those EOTAS medical populations. I think there was a moment in time where we thought maybe those numbers would come down again quite quickly following COVID. And I think what we've learned, and obviously the patterns that we've seen subsequently, are that kind of anxiety-based sort of social, emotional, mental health need, which we're seeing reflected across mainstream, primary, secondary, our ALM population and the PRS, has continued to grow. And as Jake said, that's been a really rapid increase for this service that initially we were just struggling to kind of manage without the kind of the work that's been going on over the last sort of 12 to 18 months and 2 years. So I think we now understand that population of learners far better, and we recognise that it's the carrot and stick, isn't it, with the attendance. We've got to make it appealing for them to come in and for them to want to come and learn, and for the curriculum to rewrite. But as Jake said, also we didn't initially have spaces, which again the local authority has been really good, and we've invested in those spaces as we've highlighted in the report. So I think those things have come together to enable us to be in the position now that those are going to be stood up and be offered. There have been social learning groups for some time for the EOTAS medical learners, but now we're offering that daily, aren't we, Jake? From now, we're offering it daily. We're offering it in the north and the south of the county to try and kind of reduce travel times, and so children are close to their local communities. But yeah, logistically, has been a challenge to date. So our hope is that children who are currently too unwell to attend school can start to engage and recover and actually return to their schools. That's what we're working towards. So it's a difficult balance, really, but I think one that at the moment we feel we've got a handle on in a way that perhaps we haven't had in the past.
Thank you, Marwan. And Councillor Buckley, you happy with that?
Yes, I'd just like to pick up on Jake. You came into post in September last year, and obviously the Eston inspection was in October. Have you found it helpful, the Eston report, and did it highlight things that you hadn't sort of picked up as a service?
That's a double-edged sword of it.
No, I think it's a really good question. And yeah, it was actually genuinely really, really helpful at that point early in my kind of headship to be able to have some feedback around the things that the service was doing well and the way that we needed to improve was really helpful. And I think the other important point, which is why it was a positive experience, although a stressful experience, is our school development plan virtually exactly mirrored the recommendations that Eston had given us. So although we, as it said, are in significant improvement, the reason why we weren't in any other category that is kind of more difficult than that is because the inspectors had confidence that the leadership team knew the service, knew what it was good at, and knew what it needed to improve upon before they got there, and therefore that kind of congruence of our development plan and the recommendations was really helpful to be able to say to staff, look, we all said this, we all knew this, you helped feed into the school development plan, you know the service really well, you knew what we were good at, you knew what we needed to improve. Eston agree, and that's why we've all got to kind of pull together to make sure that we follow these recommendations. So actually, although after 6 weeks it probably isn't something I would have chosen, it was a really helpful process for lots of different reasons, as you quite rightly point out.
Great, and very strong positive thinking going on there from the point of view of welcoming it as soon as you got into the post there. Very well done indeed. I know how challenging that is. And I just wanted to emphasise as well, Jake, that in asking questions, and I've just got a couple to finish this section, we are, I know I speak for everyone in the committee, we had a pre-meeting, we're incredibly supportive of the work that you all do. So we're only asking to try and elucidate and try and understand, and if anything, try and see if there are any areas that can be strengthened. But I shouldn't let it pass without saying enormous thanks to everybody involved in the services, and I'd be really grateful if you could pass that back to the services. I know from personal acquaintance with those services that there are probably no areas more challenging but also more rewarding when you can achieve the kind of outcomes that I know you'll be working on every minute of the day. So we really recognise that. This question I just wanted to come back to a little bit that you touched on, but I'm not sure we really got to the heart of. there are 3 groups of young people who are supported in the PRS, and they are different and distinctive in their reasons for being there. And there might be some people who look at this on the basis and saying it's an efficiency or a convenience to bring them together, as opposed to this is a deliberate plan to bring them together because of the benefits in the kind of outcomes that are seen and can be expected to flow from it. In other words, that each group might benefit from the interaction of the others in that group. And I just wondered if you could add a little bit further to that before we move to the next report. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, Councillor Neil. I think, as you say, they are a really distinct group of young people. I know you will have read the report, but you've got your PRU cohort, who are pupils who've been excluded from school permanently because of behavioural challenges. The medical cohort, who may have a young person who has a really serious physical medical issue, or has had surgery, or has kind of quite significant mental health anxiety around school. And then a group of ALM bespoke pupils who may be actually primary or secondary age that need something really bespoke to be able to meet their needs. The provision for those learners is quite separate at the moment. So there's 2 PRU centres. The 2 new centres are for the Otis medical learners, and they did have their provision online. And then there is another centre we have in Gilwan that supports some of our Otis medical, some of our ALM bespoke cohort with some alternative provision to support those. I think the point you make about sometimes being able to benefit from each other's, working with each other, is a really important point. There's something that we've reflected on. Some of our medical cohort would really benefit from going on the trips that the PRU pupils went on. Some of our PRU pupils would really benefit from some of the experiences that, for example, the Otis medical pupils have. So we're trying to look at how we can kind of manage that on a really careful basis, but on a basis where we look at pupil needs, we look at pupils' aptitudes, their interests, and look at how we can develop some of those social skills for our young people, because that's a really important outcome as well. So, I think, as you say, they are 3 distinct groups. We all are teachers of Cysgodd-y-Coes, and the thing that I say to myself all the time is you can't do something differently in the north to the south to Otis Medical. In terms of our approach, has to be the same, and the way that we set up our curriculum and our policies and the way that we kind of approach each day has to be the same, because we can't have a postcode lottery, you can't have a difference in the provision just because of the different needs. But obviously you will amend how you deliver that and the way in which you deliver it for that cohort in front of you. So yeah, it's a nuanced thing, Councillor Neil, and an important for you to pick up on. But that's the way that we are trying to work with those 3 distinct groups to meet their needs, but also to look at opportunities where we can bring those groups of young people together. And one example that Morwenna used was those social learning groups. They were on the PRU sites, and they will continue on the PRU sites. Doesn't necessarily bring those learners together, but it's bringing learners who may have been very anxious and in their homes and not coming out of the house into something that looks a bit like an educational establishment, that is a step towards maybe moving back into a mainstream school when they feel better and when they're able to do that with our support.
Thank you, Jake. Really good answers, and thanks very much for the questions and the responses. It's a fantastically important area. We really recognise it so much and wish you very well with the work you do. We're now moving on to the next report, which is the Specialist Resource Spaces and Additional Learning Provision. This is a 12-month stage update and progress report. And we're going to be taking this one and the next report in reasonably short order. I'm conscious of the length of the meeting, and I have committed to committee members that we will bring these ones in reasonably quickly. They are updates and progress reports, and that's one of the reasons. So over to you. And Morwenna, did you want to pick up the first part of this report?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Neil, and thank you, Jake, as well. So yeah, absolutely. This the second paper about our review of additional learning provision is an annual report. We have been here before, and I have my colleague Jacqueline Elias, Principal ALN Officer, here to field some questions around that you might have. But I think the key message really for us is that most learners with additional learning needs are successfully supported within our mainstream schools. Our specialist resource bases continue to be a significant strength with improving quality and consistency, and that was recently recognised through our Estin local authority inspection. We have now an embedded, robust review and quality assurance framework, which we work through collaboratively with our schools through self-supported evaluation, or supported self-evaluation, sorry. And there has been lots of positive progress in this area. However, the report also highlights that there are some clear challenges as we move forward, especially as the demand for these specialist placements in particular it continues to increase, particularly in relation to social, emotional, mental health needs, which is a slight overlap with obviously the paper we've just heard on, so that there will be challenges ahead of us in the way that we manage our additional learning provision across the county. But ultimately, we're looking to continue to strengthen our local provision, our specialist provision, and to ensure that it is equitable and sustainable for Monmouthshire. And both myself and Jackie would welcome any questions that members may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Morwenna. And questions, if we have any from our committee members. I see Councillor Strong with your hand up.
Yeah, thanks very much. We've been asked to look at whether the ALN model is sustainable. Looking at that in financial terms for the moment, the theory is that the money follows the child. Is enough money following the child, or is the financial, and I don't want to use the word burden because I'm not talking about the pupils being a burden, I'm talking about the bills being a burden. It's a financial burden, a significant factor in leading some of our schools into deficit. We've been looking at this in a task and finish group, and I think we need to isolate the different main factors in leading to these problems in some schools. I got a couple of questions about SRBs. Are we dealing with that at the moment? Yeah, okay. Just quick ones. You mentioned that a working group is developing an evidence-based approach to literacy. Is that code for phonics, or is it something wider than that? Where does reading for pleasure also come in alongside phonics or what have you? So I'd like to know a bit more about that. I notice as well the reference to work or placement opportunities, very prescient in relation to Alan Millwood's recent interim report. So you're ahead of the game on that one. That's clearly a definite challenge with ALN pupils. So I'd like to know a little bit more about how you go about that, and maybe one or two good stories of success in that field. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Strong. And Jacqueline, I saw your finger itching to come in there. I didn't know if that was something you wanted to immediately respond to.
I don't know whether you want to respond to the initial question. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Strong. And if I just, absolutely, around the financial implication, I don't know if I get myself in all sorts of trouble saying we'd always like more money, particularly when we're talking about our most vulnerable learners. But I think what we have got in Monmouthshire is really a good understanding of the money that we have. The majority of the money relating to, all of the money relating to additional learning needs is delegated to our schools, and we retain a little bit for those sort of exceptional, extraordinary situations where schools can provide evidence that they might require. So it could be for a child who's moving in, or an early years child with significant complexity of needs that wouldn't have yet been considered within the school's budget. The increase in demand and complexity of additional learning needs across the piece, I think, does present us all with a challenge, both in our mainstreams and in our specialist provisions. And it is putting pressure on our schools. I don't think we can deny that. But I think what we would say is collectively as a service, and with all of the members in our teams, we work really closely with our schools to help them understand need as early as possible. We've got a really good, strong early years forecasting and school entry system, which is supported by the Educational Psychology Service. So in most cases, we know about these children before they start school and can put the appropriate support and reassurance in place for those children. But it absolutely, I think, I don't know, it continues to be a challenge, and I think our ability now to kind of track and forecast the need that we have in the county now and in years to come, to know where we need to grow provision or provide additional support, has been really powerful for us over the last 3 and 4 years to be able to do that.
And the purpose of this report, which is to inform you around the the additional learning provision reviews actually feeds into that really well, because of within the ALN code, chapter 7, it is specifically around looking at where we have sufficient provision and insufficient provision, and in doing these reviews allows the local authority to have, plenty of evidence to support any requests that may go through the political process, through DMT, SMT and council, to request further funding if that is felt necessary. So I think it's the evidence base that this process is able to provide is really important, because it's not just about, as what has said, everyone would like more money, of course, but you have to be able to evidence why that money is required and what it will do and the impact it will have. And I think what we're demonstrating through this report is that we've got really well-established systems to support that kind of decision making and taking.
And I think Councillor Strong's other questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know, Jackie, are you happy to pick up the one about the literacy in the SRBs?
In terms of the literacy in SRBs, it is about ensuring consistency across all our resource bases in terms of the approach we take to how children learn to read and enjoy reading. As you say, that is a really critical factor. Clearly children within our specialist settings do have challenges around sometimes acquiring some basic skills, but we want to make sure that the interventions that we're offering, and obviously we work very closely with our educational psychology colleagues who lead on the literacy team, that what we're providing children in terms of the intervention is evidence-based, that there is an evidence to show that this is impactful, and that we're able to roll this out across all the resource bases in Monmouthshire, because obviously some children within the secondary sector will still have learning needs that may require what would have been traditionally primary materials. So it is making sure that we have an approach which is consistent across all the resource bases, and that anything that we invest in for our resource bases is evidence-based, so that we make sure our children have the most appropriate provision.
Thank you, Councillor Strong. And there was a third part to your question, which was around the post-16 placements, I think, for our children from the SRBs. And it's an area of great success for us. So I'll let Jackie talk about that as well.
Yeah, I think we can, if you wanted examples, obviously within this context, I know we have a school in the north of the borough who is very successfully found work placements for their post-16 children who are linked to the specialist resource base. I think it's a real credit to the school and to Monmouthshire that has been so proactively taken up. It is a challenge, but actually it's a challenge that our resource bases have demonstrated can be met, and actually the children, we will have examples that we can give you outside this forum to show you how successful that is. And I think that's something going forward in collaboration with other colleagues, is that we really want that to expand, because that is really a measure of how successful we are as an education authority if we've got children leaving our specialist resource bases going into work, even if it's supported in some way.
Jackie, could I just make the point? You've just made the point actually extremely well, and it's just to add to it that reports like these that we're looking at this morning, they can benefit tremendously from some particular examples, anonymized but particular examples, because they can bring to life this whole area that we're all asking about, which is, what is the positive impact? In what way does this improve outcomes? And we tend to find out about that in the questions, but anyone reading the reports wouldn't necessarily know it. So I just encourage you to not over-formalize reports to the extent that you think, well, that's not something to add. I'd very much encourage you to add those sorts of examples. That would be good to know. Councillor Strong, were you content with those before I move on?
Just quick come back. Yeah, on the last one, I appreciate that confidentiality prevents us from giving details of stories, but I'm sure they're there. And there's nothing more satisfying than seeing an ALM pupil doing really well. And again, without going into any details, I mean, I know one from the school where I taught who's now internationally renowned in a practical and artistic skill that he's very much made his own. You probably know who he is. On the evidence based, what I really wanted to know was what are you actually? Sorry, making funny noises. What are you actually finding from your research, from the evidence that you're looking at? What does actually work? Is it a similar approach across the board for all pupils, or is it a very individualistic approach? So, phonics might work for one, but not at all for another. How does that work in that context?
We're very child-centred in everything we do, and particularly within the context of resource base. I think if you go into any classroom, and I think we welcome visits from anyone into any of our SRB classrooms, you will see quite bespoke and individualised timetables for children, because we have to plan in that way to ensure that their needs are met. So yes, there will be probably an approach to phonics or to sight words or whatever, but actually each individual child will have their own personal plan that they will be working through. I mean, obviously that with reading, you are going to be focusing on decoding words and encoding words for spelling, but it has to be done at a pace that the child can manage and be successful at, because I think we talk a lot in ALN world around small steps and overlearning, and I think that's a really important element. It seems like you might be going very slowly, but in fact what you're doing is making sure that child has absorbed everything necessary to move on to the next stage before you do move on. And I think we've got, and again it's great that we've been invited to provide anonymised evidence. We've got fantastic evidence of how well and how much progress our children within our resource bases make. And we were very proud to share that with Estin, and clearly they recognised the success that our resource bases and the teachers within that are having.
Thank you, Jackie. That's a very, very good response as well. And moving across to Councillor Buckler.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say I seized with great delight the glossary for all these acronyms, which I left behind. So I can't make use of it. I thought it was brilliant, because it is, we are littered with acronyms, aren't we? One thing, I would like to say, obviously we still lack provision for pupils with significant needs, and 37 pupils are still educated in out-of-county placements. How can we sort of rectify this, really, because development of local therapeutic provision has been limited, and from everything you've been saying before, Jake, this is, you are changing, you're shifting the emphasis on these services, which seems such a good way to go. How can we sort of bring those together and actually, change that dynamic? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Buckley. So absolutely, I think there are two groups of children who it would be fair to say that despite making huge progress in bringing and keeping many of our children within county provision, we still do have a handful of children in out-of-county placements. I think there's a couple of factors, really. I think in all local authorities across Wales, there will always be the children at the sort of the top end of the triangle in terms of complexity of needs, who need something that perhaps the local authority can't offer. But we are always looking to expand and grow that provision. And I think when we break down the kind of the profile of those out-of-county placements, I'm fairly certain that quite a proportion of them are post-16 and at the latter end of our secondary school profile. So we are placing less, if that makes sense, so that over time we hope that we will continue to maintain more children in the county. And off the back of that, as was acknowledged through Estin and through this report, is we have recognised for some time through our review and our work with our schools that we have a need for more sufficient provision for social, emotional, mental health needs. And that is a bit of an overlap with the work going on in Cysgod y Coed around those younger children who are presenting with behaviours of distress or challenge that means that their needs can't be currently well met within our mainstream suite of schools, can't think of the right word. So there is something in development currently that we hope will address that from the next academic year, to address some of that area of need, so that because we need to adapt our provision to meet the need that we're being presented with, and we've recognised that as a insufficiency, to use the language of the code, so that we hope that we will continue to make progress on maintaining more children within Monmouthshire-led provision where they can remain close to their communities. But I do wonder if there will always be a handful for whom particularly profound and multiple sort of medical conditions, where currently we don't have that infrastructure for the provision that some of those learners with really complex medical and physical needs may require. I don't know, Jackie, if you've got anything to add to that.
I mean, that number is very, very small, but that could be the case if, for example, a child required significant nursing care throughout the day, for example. But, you know, that those numbers are quite low. I think the progress that's been made in accommodating the majority of children with complex ALM within Monmouthshire has been significant. Certainly in the 8 years that I've been here, the numbers of out-of-county placements has reduced significantly. And yes, we recognise 37 is 37 more than we'd want, but there will always be, I think it would be inaccurate to say we'd get down to zero, because there will be children whose needs are so complex that they would require something very, very specialist. But I think the fact that Monmouthshire has moved so significantly towards accommodating the majority of children with complex ALM within its borders is extremely good progress, and I think we're going to obviously improve that number further as we go along, hopefully.
Thank you, Jackie. And Councillor Buckler, just quickly, if there's any further point.
Yes, thank you for that, Jackie. So you do sort of foresee and plan that these numbers will reduce further. How much is currently being spent each year in out-of-county placements? And I'm not talking about, obviously, those cases which you've highlighted that are, you know, complex medical needs, etc., which there will always be some. We quite understand that. But that could be potentially retained within Monmouthshire.
That might be a question you need to follow
I
up.
was going to say, I think I could guess, but I would hate to get it wrong in this forum, so I would like to check that and come back to you. Would that be okay,
yes,
Councillor
indeed.
Buckley?
Thank
because
you.
I thought I might have had that written down, but I don't.
It's okay, but
I will check and I will return that to you as soon as possible.
Thank you.
So thank you, Councillor Buckler, and also thank you for the reference to the acronyms. Of course, the service acronym guide is properly known as the SAG. If we could get that right in the future, but
I'll try.
I also noticed on the service acronym guide you had a page 2, and it was empty. It's like you're expecting a lot more to come. You know, there are plenty on page 1. Thanks very much indeed. So I'm going to ask for the final question from Councillor Pavia.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just following on the back of Councillor Buckler's question there on those out-of-county placements, and particularly that local therapeutic provision that we're still trying to arrange. I mean, it looks like there's difficulty securing health-based agreement in that with NHS partners. What is actually holding this up, and whose responsibility is resolving it? You know, I know from with my other sort of professional work hat on that the challenges in relation to children and young people's continuing care and continuing healthcare for adults, that the challenge of healthcare partners accepting their responsibilities when, you know, they should be delivering and funding provision. So it would be good to understand and unpack the problems there, and what the sort of realistic timescale is to resolve that. And just finally, Chair, in terms of the SEMH provision, the proposal has been developed for primary school pupils. You said in, I think it's the last bullet point, that the proposal has been developed, but have we got any idea in terms of implementation? Is there a cost envelope to that? I'd just be interested to understand, because obviously that is an urgent gap in terms of whole inclusion that's been highlighted. So a bit more information on that as well would be helpful. Thanks, Chair.
Great, thank you, Councillor Pavia. And I'm going to ask for responses to be concise because we're rapidly running out of the meeting schedule.
Thank you, Councillor Pavia, for your questions. Absolutely. I'll actually address your second point first, because then I'd ask Jackie to come in on the first point. So in terms of the SEMH provision, we are hopeful. So financially, it has been taken through the council, and we have funding to hopefully have provision that is different from September. We are just waiting for it to finish to go through the political arena in the very near future. But we are hopeful that we will be providing something different from September for a small group of those children who are currently out of school on ALM bespoke provision packages, and that will look a bit more sustainable and in line with our other additional learning provision within the local authority. And we use a combination of funding from the local authority, but also the ALN grant funding, capital grant funding from the Welsh Government, which we've secured again this year to specifically look at developing that provision over the next academic year. In terms of the first point around the linking with the healthcare, there is a Welsh Government level review of the healthcare. I can't remember what the document called, the healthcare support and provision for children with healthcare needs in schools. It's been quite detailed, because we're facing the same challenges as all local authorities are, that school-based staff are being asked to carry out, in some cases, quite complex and invasive medical procedures on children and young people. So we welcome that national review, and actually one of our colleagues is sitting on the advisory board for that with Welsh Government. She's not able to be here today. So we welcome that, and we've contributed towards that. But equally, we work very closely with our DECLO, our designated educational link officer for the National Health Service, and work really closely with her and really positively with her. But the NHS is a big organisation, and I think Jackie's probably got more to add, but I think when it comes down to individual children needs, sometimes we have the provision and there are plans in place, but it's that sort of strategic oversight that we would like more. In Monmouthshire, we aren't necessarily recognised as having a specialist school because we don't have it in one building like most other local authorities in Wales. So we have to work hard to get our model understood by the health services, which we are making progress on, I think, and the Estin report has further supported that kind of acknowledgement of our SRBs as specialist provision. I don't know if you've got anything to add.
Actually,
there,
I'm just going to intervene, if I may, because we are, I've committed that we're going to be finishing in the next 5 minutes, and we've got one more report. So I'm just basically going to say thank you for those questions and for those responses. And to underline, I think on behalf of the whole committee, just how important we recognise the challenges and the importance of the work that you all do. It's astonishing when you read about it. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're able to bring it to life for other readers of these reports by giving great examples, anonymised as they might be, I think it would be really helpful. So thank you very much indeed. We're going to move to the final report, which is the update report. And we're going to deal with this one. Its brevity is not trying to reflect any less important aspects. It's literally that it's an update, and we have read the report. But is it possible to pull out any key points, and we'll take it from there?
Thank you, Chair. And absolutely, this is an update report to share with members how we continue to support our most vulnerable learners and the impact of a range of inclusion services across Monmouthshire. I've got my colleague, Dr. Lucy Doyle here, who's the Principal Educational Psychologist who has oversight of many of these services and support for schools. And I think we're just happy to open straight away to questions, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Lucy, I don't know if there's anything you really want to pull out as absolutely the key points of the report. By all means, do so.
No, I guess what's clear in there is that the focus we have on our preventative work in Monmouthshire, as well as obviously being responsive to schools and situations that arise, we have a strong focus on the preventative work that we do with our schools and developing the workforce capacity to meet a wide range of needs.
Thank you. And I see Councillor Buckler's hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to sort of highlight really something we haven't gone into at all yet, which is the trauma-informed programme. Officers acknowledge that pupil outcomes are not yet consistently quantified or tracked across the system. And how would you, you reference improved confidence, positive feedback and stronger relationships, but where's the hard evidence that these interventions are improving attendance, attainment and long-term outcomes for learners? Thank you.
Yeah, so in terms of the trauma-informed work that we have been doing to date, that has been preventative work, and that's been around professional learning at a whole school level. So therein lies the difficulty with looking at kind of hard data around pupil outcomes. We know from the professional learning that we've delivered that it has developed an increased staff confidence to understand and meet the needs of those learners, and that in turn will have a positive impact on outcomes. We know from the paperwork we receive from schools that the language schools are using, the way that they understand behaviours, communication, the change in their language and understanding is there to see. But in terms of the longer term impact of that professional learning, that's the element that we'll be looking at longer term. So it's more the trauma-informed work. Obviously, there are layers of, we look at the ELSA work, but the trauma-informed is around professional learning for staff. And so we've been focusing on the trauma-skilled training, and we have this academic year rolled out the trauma-enhanced, which has more of an element of strategies for staff to be working at an individual level. Does that answer your question?
Thank you very much. It strikes me as being a very important element, and will, as it progresses, make those outcomes much better for pupils that have these dilemmas in their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckler. Thank you, Lucy. And just before we finish, I just wanted to ask a more open question, Lucy. If money were not the answer, but you had a free rein to do two things to improve your service, what would they be?
On the spot.
So improve the service across services or services to schools.
How would you approach it?
I mean, schools will often ask for more of our time. So they value what we bring and what we give, but they want more of it. If there was no, like you said, money was no objective, there would be more time to work preventatively, but also in the moment where schools need to think about something at an individual level. What would the other?
It might be you only want to do one thing. That's allowed.
I guess it's always about working very much with our schools and working collaboratively with other services. So really strengthening that collaboration that we have, so outside of education, but also working very closely with our young people, thinking about pupil voice, where that's really strong for us, gathering pupil voice as well to guide what we do. So there would be, and also the research element, there'd be many things with blue sky thinking we could be doing, and continuing to strengthen the elements that we're doing, because I think we're doing the right things. We could be doing more of those things.
Yeah, good answer. The right things, but more of them. That sounds like we're on the absolute right path as well, which is good to know. Okay, well, look, thank you. Thank you very much indeed for the report and for all the work that goes into it. And grateful if you again could pass on the thanks of the committee to everyone involved, because it's genuinely meant, and we really, really value all the work that goes on in this area. So thank you for that. And I'm going to move us on to the last of the items on the agenda, which is the next item being item 10, the Council and Cabinet Work Planner. Robert, was there anything that you wanted to flag up?
Not from me, Chair. It's more for the members, if there's anything that jumps out at them as something to scrutinise or to look at.
Absolutely, and they will, I'm sure they will advise us. Item 11, the Performance and Overview Work Programme and Action List. Again, Robert?
I'll be very quick. The action list that was published on the agenda I had the answer to it just as the agenda was being published, so that it got missed off. But the answer was there are 13 private children's residential homes currently active in the county. So just for everyone to know, I thought it was easier to say it than email it to everyone. You should have all received an email, an invitation to next Thursday's People Committee because of the WESP item. So just to check you've all had that. If not, please let us know. You might have seen on there, we've added an extra date, a special, on the 8th of September to cover various things, in subsequent to which of the agenda being published, the procurement report has also been added into that meeting, which should tally in with the enablers. So there's a bit of overlap there, which is relevant. And then could I just point out that our next meeting on the 30th, because it had to be brought forward, there was a bit of an overlap with the chamber booking, and therefore a tiny bit of tug of war, all peacefully resolved, but such that we just need to start a tiny bit later. So we can't get into the chamber until 9:30. So Chair, if it's okay, we'll just have to start the pre-meeting a tad later than normal, and perhaps then the main meeting 5 to 10 minutes.
Let's do that. Okay. Let's do that. And I'm glad you were able to do that peacefully. That's the image of when they're not peaceful, the image is quite strong in my head. But thanks for that, Robert. That's really good. And just to confirm, item 12, to confirm the minutes of the previous meeting. If there are any corrections or any changes, I see none. So confirming those. And so the next meeting is to be confirmed. We may need to shift it to 10:15. But as Robert said, we've got to just find a way of getting into the chamber to begin the pre-meet. But it's on the 30th of June with any changes to 10 o'clock to be confirmed. But thank you again, everybody. And I now close the meeting. Thanking everybody for your reports and your answers and your questions. Thank you.